You're listening to the League of Legends podcast of strategy, innovation, and hosts with great beards. This is
First Blood.
Hello and welcome to First Blood. I am Alec, aka Eat More Chicken, and I'm here with my co-host Will, aka Sinscar. Say hello, Will.
Hello, Will.
I knew you were gonna do that.
Yeah.
You filthy, filthy man. Anyway, welcome to our cast. We're here to discuss, of course, the great and wonderful game League of Legends that we all play and love and enjoy. Our real purpose here is just to give you all our opinion on mostly going to be the champions and the different elements of the game, like items and things like that, and help you guys maybe, if not become better players, then to just maybe take a second look at some things and maybe see things from a different perspective. So we're going to jump right into our topics for today. We're going to discuss the newest champion to League of Legends, Nami. We're going to go over her abilities and what we see her doing in the League of Legends community during Season 3. We're also going to talk items today. One item in particular, the giant OP-ness-filled Black Cleaver, and let you know what our opinion is on that and the buffs and nerfs to that item that have come out recently. And then we're also going to finish out the day with a section that we're going to talk about different types of CC. And today we're going to talk about stun. So we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to start off with just a little bit of news. Obviously, if you guys haven't seen it yet, you got your Snowdown Showdown skins are finally available. We start with Slaybell Katarina. Always wonderful to see Katarina getting new skins.
The hottest.
We have Bad Santa Viger, or Viger. I don't know how anybody pronounces that anymore.
Also, somehow the hottest.
It's the beard. You know, I've just found that a well-bearded skin.
That reminds me of Gandalf. It's pretty timing.
There's the Gandalf Vigor skin. Remember?
Is there?
Yeah, there's a Gandalf one too. So
I never saw that one.
It's just Vigor just gets all of the well-bearded skins. I don't know how that works. Anyway, we also have Dark Candy Fiddlesticks, which is just terrifying as Fiddlesticks usually is. Although he also seems somehow yummy. Like I want to eat him, because I'm fat. And last of all, we have my personal favorite, which is Snow Day Ziggs. So something about the idea of throwing severed snowman heads at people just fills me with the Christmas spirit, doesn't you?
They have words for people like you.
I believe it's sociopath. I believe sociopath is the word you're looking for.
That would be one such word among several I could think of.
Yes. So those are our new skins. Overall, what do you think, Will? Are these something that you'll look into purchasing or would be interested in purchasing?
I'm proud to say that I have literally not spent a single red cent on a skin for this game.
That's because you have more self-control than some of us.
Now, I do have a few of the free skins. I do have Unchained Alistair, which I got for free.
Which everybody should have.
And I also have Riot Girl Tristana.
Which everybody should have.
And I believe those are the only two free skins you can get. But no, skins, I like Fiddlesticks. I like Slaybell Katarina. But unless someone buys me them for Christmas, I'm just going to be sticking with normal Katarina and normal Fiddlesticks.
Also wise choices. I don't know. I have some alt skins myself, but I don't know if this is something I'll pick up or not. Maybe the Ziggs one's just because, like I said, severed heads, fun stuff. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I haven't even seen one actually in action yet. I don't know if anybody's even picked them up. I know the patch just came out. Was it yesterday or?
Well, most of the time, if you go to reignofgaming.net, they have videos of the champion, the new skins in action, so you can see if you like how they kind of look in the game before you buy them. So,
awesome. So those are your Snowdown Showdown skins. We're also going to talk patch notes because the preseason balance patch is out, and dear Lord, the nerfs. The nerfs are just flying around with this patch. I'm looking through them right now, and I can honestly say that I do not see a buff anywhere in this patch. I mean, you've got Cho'Gath, Diana, Fiora, Rengar, Teemo, and Zyra all taking pretty significant hits. But, you know, as I'm looking at this list, the one that sticks out to me the most is Diana, because she just got slapped across the face with these nerfs. On Crescent Strike, her base damage is being reduced pretty significantly. It'll be reduced to 60, 95, 130, 165, 200, from 70, 110, 150, 190, 230.
Well, it seems like what they're trying to do here is kind of correct where Diana is showing up, because she was pretty much intended to be a jungler, but a lot of people are running her pretty solidly in the mid there, and she's pretty much dominating. Well,
I mean, and then, you know, with these other nerfs too, like her Moonfall pull, the max distance that you can pull from is being reduced. The range on her Lunar Rush is reduced 150 points back. And her Pale Cascade, the orb detonation damage, is, the radius of that is reduced. And the orb hitbox is being adjusted to better match the visual effect, which, you know, whatever, that doesn't make that big of a difference. But, I mean, it is kind of what you're saying. It looks like they want her to really be the jungler she was supposed to be instead of a mid. Because, I mean, I played a bunch of Diana's mid, or against a bunch of Diana's mid, and of course I'm a Karthus man. And I can just honestly say that Diana was just so suppressive in lane, let alone when she was jungling. I mean, how do you see this being detrimental to her, Will, or what do you think?
Well, she's certainly still very strong. She's got fantastic ganks out of the bush. I mean, a gap closer plus a pull plus a slow. You can't really ask for much more than that. I mean, it's basically like a Moo, but with fantastically higher damage.
And everybody loves that. Some other ones of note, like I said, Cho'Gath got a bit of a nerf to his Carnivore Health Restore. The base of it went down significantly, and then they raised the top end of it only by 3 points. So Cho'Gath, his sustain is down a little bit. This could mean that he'll be a little bit easier to push out of lane, which could make him see a little less play, which I will not be sad about. I don't like to go top lane and see a Cho'Gath.
You know, the thing about Season 3, there's so many new items. The jungle is completely different. You know, we don't really know what's going to happen since it's just a preseason. But, you know, the champions that you thought you couldn't build a certain way, and the champions that you thought were good and thought were bad, none of that really applies anymore. And so I think a lot of things are going to be really new and really fresh once Season 3 is fully implemented.
Cool. I have to agree with that, definitely. We have a nerf to Teemo, his ability power.
Oh, thank God.
I know most people hate a Teemo. I love a Teemo. I've always loved a Teemo. So I'm always a little sad to see Teemo getting nerfs. But it's only a really slight nerf. His ability power ratio on impact is being reduced on his Toxic Shot. But only by 1/10 of a point. So not so bad. And then on Noxious Trap, his damage is being reduced at the later ranks, kind of significantly, but not. It's still the same at its early ranks, so it can still be pretty brutal. Teemo, not really much to talk about there. Zyra is getting nice nerf to most of her damage on Rise of the Thorns, which is her passive, and the missile speed is being reduced, and the missile width is being reduced. So now when you kill a Zyra, you really don't have to worry about the immediate death that used to follow from that, which will be kind of nice. And then Grasping Roots is getting a little bit of a nerf to its speed. And let's see, that's all for Zyra. And then the big one, another big one in my mind, is Rengar is getting a little bit of a slap here. His base damage is reduced. His heal has been reduced to 10% instead of from 15% on Battle Roar. And Thrill of the Hunt, his ultimate, the fade time is getting increased to 1.25 from 0.75 seconds. So that's actually really significant increase to that fade time. and now he has a fade pushback time, which I know that everybody is actually kind of excited about this, or anybody that plays against a Rengar on a consistent basis. So now the pushback will be pushed back 1 second per hit, up to 3 seconds. So now you don't have to worry about, I know, Will, you were talking about this earlier, how frustrating it is to be just wailing on a Rengar and then he pops his ultimate and poof.
Well, one of the things, and I think this is a really smart move from a balance perspective, even though it was not to the level of, say, a Shaco stealth, because Rengar is a fairly tanky champion with built-in sustain, I think that it was a smart move to force him to be even more tanky. One of the problems is that because he was so tanky, it took so much, especially towards the mid and late game, to bring him down.
No doubt.
That when he would stealth, the rest of his team could easily clean up because you wasted so much of your resources trying to take him down. And now, with this nerf to his ultimate, and it is a very significant nerf.
Incredibly.
Most of the time, you will at least be able to bring down that Rengar and get some bang for your buck as far as using ultimates, using items, and summer spells on Rengar.
Yeah, so could be seeing maybe a little bit less Rengar play, depending, I guess, how people adjust to this. We will see. Last of all, I mentioned before that Nidalee got a pretty nice visual upgrade. She's one of those last few champions that desperately needed the visual upgrade. To see more of that, you could go, there's a champion spotlight up on the right homepage where you can see Nidalee in all of her new art glory. And we're always happy to see champions getting some rework done and everything like that. So I think that's all I had for the news and the patch notes. So let's go ahead and get right into the meat of our topics today. And we're going to start with our champion review. And to kick things off, since this is episode 1, we're going to start with the newest one, and that is Nami.
Oh, Nami. Well, I gotta say, just so it's not all that ambiguous, I'm just not even remotely impressed with this champion. The concept is fantastic. I think Riot's really doing a lot of things to try to really make the support role into one that is more than just planting wards and healing your AD carry. And I think that with a couple of tweaks, this champion could be really good. But as it stands right now, the abilities don't really have that much of an impact, and I guess we'll talk about it more specifically right now.
Yeah, let's go ahead and go through these abilities. So her Q is her Aqua Prison, and that sends a bubble towards a targeted area, dealing damage and stunning all enemies on impact. Her W is Ebb and Flow, and that unleashes a stream of water that bounces back and forth between allies and enemies. It heals your allies and damages the enemies, but it cannot hit the same champion more than once. Her E is Tide Caller's Blessing. This empowers an allied champion for a short duration. That ally's basic attacks will deal bonus magic damage and slow the target that they are hitting. And her ultimate, her R, is the Tidal Wave. This summons a massive tidal wave that knocks up and slows enemies, and it also speeds up your friendly champions that it passes through. It's got a very long range and a pretty wide radius, although I've noticed not the widest radius on some of these global, as some of these other global knock-up, knock-back type ultimates. So those are her abilities. So we can talk a little bit about what you think about these abilities and what I think about these abilities. And let's start with that Aqua Prison, because on the surface, and I've seen it in action, it's not a bad ability as far as a ranged knock-up stun type ability goes.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it really reminds me a little bit of a sort of a spammable version of Malphite's old. I mean, it's targeted in a circle, it knocks enemies up, it deals them damage. One nice thing about it is that the cost of it, at least according to Riot right now, is locked in at 60 mana, so even though this has kind of a long cooldown, it's pretty much cast it whenever it's up, because you're never going to run out of mana.
You're never not casting this ability. If you're in a situation where this needs to be casted and it's off of its cooldown, you're pretty much never not casting this ability.
That's right. And it has pretty decent damage and 0.65 AP ratio, so it's not bad, but You would never run this champion mid because the champion literally only has 1, maybe to 1.5 offensive abilities. But you really wouldn't want to level this in a support role because then you'd be pretty much handicapping yourself on probably what you would primarily want, which is the next ability.
Right, and as somebody that plays a lot of support, not by choice but by necessity, I could say that like an ability like this, or like I played a support Zyra, and you take her root ability. You usually take like 1 point or early in an ability like this, but then you don't really touch it too often after that, just because, like you were saying, it's kind of like an initiate opportunity for your ADC, but it's not something like it. You definitely can't run her solo using just her Aqua Prism. But I mean, overall, I think it's definitely not a bad ability, and it fills a need for her, absolutely. But I think that it's not quite up to the snuff of some other similar abilities in the support role. Let's move on real quick to her W, which is really where I think Nami kind of starts to fall apart. That's her ebb and flow, that stream of water that bounces back and forth between allies and enemies. I don't know, Will, have you gotten to play much Nami or seen much Nami in action?
I'm not even taking the time to buy her because I'm just not even remotely impressed with her. But I will say, for ebb and flow, one of the things that happens in a game where you try to create a hybrid class like they've done here that can heal and that can do damage is that usually, in order to make sure that you don't create a champion that is better than a pure healing class and better than a pure damage dealing class, you end up making an ability like Ebb and Flow, which doesn't really do healing or damage all that effectively.
Correct. And I mean, that's what I was about to say. I have gotten to play with her on occasion and play against her. And that ebb and flow is so inconsistent because all of the enemies that you want to hit or your ally has to be in range for it to be able to heal and do damage at the same time. And like I said, it can't hit the same friendly or enemy more than once. So, if it say, and I cast ebb and flow onto, let's say, my Ezreal, sure, you're going to heal Ezreal for a little bit, but if the guys chasing Ezreal are not in range, it's not going to bounce to them, and it won't bounce back and hit me to heal me either. So it's just one of those abilities that just seems so incredibly inconsistent. It's never going to do exactly what you want it to do when you want it to do it. And I just think it makes Nami completely fall apart in the support role. Because she does, I mean, that's one of her, that's besides maybe her E, the Tidecaller's Blessing, that's the ability that you're going to want to be casting a lot, the ebb and flow. And it just doesn't cut it.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, I don't really know how they would fix this, maybe increase the bounce range, but the problem is in trying to make a champion that can do everything a little bit. You can't let it do anything better than a pure healing class like a Soraka or Sona, and you can't let it deal more damage than a kill lane type like maybe like a Leona or
like a Blitzcrank.
Right.
But so then you have her Tidecaller's Blessing, which empowers an allied champion for the slow and bonus magic damage, which I may say is pretty nasty on like an Ashe. If you cast Tidecaller's Blessing on Ashe, the amount of slow that she puts down is pretty astronomical. But with other champions, especially true AD champions, it's not going to do a whole lot. It's still not a bad ability. Like I said before, it's not terrible. It's like her Aqua Prism. It's not a terrible ability, but it's just not quite the level that you would want. And that seems to be a running thing with Nami. And we come last to her ultimate, the Tidal Wave, knocks up and slows enemies. A lot of these big CC ultimates are normally really good, like Janna. Her giant CC ultimate is one of those ultimates that you really want to have on your team. But this one doesn't seem to fill the same role. What do you think?
Well, it's interesting you mentioned Janna, because I think everything in this ultimate is good except for the fact that it just moves so slowly that you can just shamble out of the way.
It's really funny. Like, I've noticed that I was playing against Nami actually, and our entire team grouped up. Nami casts her tidal wave, and we literally just list lazily to the side of the lane and let the thing. It doesn't cover the entire lane, so it just passes right by, and then we jump on her and kill her.
It almost seems, based on her passive, when her abilities hit your allies, you get movement speed. But it almost seems like something that you would want to not even worry about trying to hit the enemy with, but just cast on your friends as an initiate, almost like an ultimate that is just a cheap version of Shirelia's Reverie.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. And I mean, if you get lucky enough to maybe catch the entire enemy team off guard, then hooray, you get a knock up and a slow. But yeah, it is basically an ultimate that's just another form of Shirelia's Revelry. And I would honestly just rather have like Sona with Shirelia's Revelry instead.
Right.
And I think that's what eventually Nami comes down to, is that she just doesn't stack up against the other supports. Like, if you're wanting a kill lane, you want to go with someone like a Blitzcrank or a Leona, someone that's just dedicated to kill lane. If you want a healer, there are just better options. There's Soraka, there's Sona. If you want like the trap kind of support, like you can play the support Zyra, or even hilariously enough, like a support Teemo with his mushrooms is honestly almost even better than this. And I might be stretching it a bit there, but at the same time, I think it just comes down to, while Nami is okay, there are just better options out there if you're looking to play a support.
Well, what I would like to see, I don't think that you can really safely improve her kill lane potential, but what I'd like to see is for her to keep the amount of offensive ability that she has now, but improve her ability to heal. For instance, only one of her abilities actually heals your friends. So, for instance, I would like to see on her Q and potentially even on her ultimate some sort of support or healing addendum. Like, for instance, the tidal wave, it'll buff your movement speed. But why not add a healing element to your allies for that ultimate, so that way when a team fight has been fully initiated, you can ult into the enemy team, and even if you don't hit them, you're still going to heal your team. That seems fine to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, overall, Nami, getting the meh vote from me. Somebody that I would probably not really want to use, except in very, very, very narrow situations. Like if my ADC is an Ashe, I might think about picking up Nami. But what do you, on your list, where does Nami fall, Will?
I don't really see any reason to run her over just about any other support available at this point. I mean, she might be okay with an Ashe, like you said, for just ridiculous amounts of slow, but as it stands, her abilities don't really synergize that well with each other, and they all kind of do different things, and I'm going to give her a meh as well.
So, say that like somebody's listening to us and is like, I don't care what you guys say, I'm going to go play Nami. If we are looking at what would be a good build for Nami, if we absolutely had to play Nami, if she was the last support in the world and we had to play her, if you were going to build Nami, how would you do it?
Well, her AP ratios are actually pretty good. You definitely want to be trying to cast Aqua Prison as much as possible. I gotta say, I'd like to see Aqua Prison maybe get scaled back a little bit on the early game, but scale up to a higher level knock-up in the late game, because you're pretty much locked in at 1.25 seconds, but I think 0.75 scaling up to maybe 2 seconds would really help her a lot. But cooldown reduction definitely going to be huge. A little bit of AP, I don't know, it's tough to say.
I mean, her aggressive abilities are just enough so that, she's gonna be like a Lulu in the sense that, her abilities do deal some damage, so you're gonna want some AP thrown in there somewhere, just to give her that little bit of viability to maybe be able to hold her own a little bit. But like you said, I think crucial for Nami is going to be her cooldowns. Because Aqua Prison, you're just going to want to be spamming that. You're going to want cooldown reduction on Ebb and Flow so that you can cast it whenever you're able to. Tidecaller's Blessing, like I said before, is huge based on your ADC. So I think overall, cooldown reduction is just critical for Nami. And then, of course, just the usual gold for 10 stuff that supports normally get as far as item builds go. You're going to want some of that. You're going to want some health regain because, like I said before with the with Ebb and Flow, it's not going to bounce to you too often either. So you're going to want some extra health regain and stuff like that just to be able to keep yourself a little bit more sustained in lane. So that's what we had for Nami. So let's move on. We're going to move on to our item review for this week. And we're going to talk about an item that has really taken League of Legends by storm since the patch for Season 3 came about. And that is the Black Cleaver.
The Black Cleaver. What? I would put this item on a support. Like Sona with 6 Black Cleavers. Just go. Just
every slot filled with a Black Cleaver. Now, and I mean, this is not. Let's be clear. Those of you who have played since before now will remember that the Black Cleaver was another item. Like Black Cleaver's been around for a long time, but it was one of those BF sword builds. You know, like you had to have the BF sword to build it, and I think it was like BF sword. Dagger was the build for Black Cleaver, so
yeah,
it was
it was.
So it was the cheapest of the BF Sword ADC builds, but it was by far the worst because you could go much better with your BF Sword for like an Infinity Edge or a Bloodletter or something like
Bloodthirster.
Bloodthirster.
Do you play League of Legends?
I do English good. I play League good. So Bloodthirster and Infinity Edge were just infinitely better ways to go with the BF Sword. But now, the Black Cleaver has become something else entirely, an entirely new animal. So, Will, what do we got for the Black Cleaver?
Well, I've never seen such a turnaround from season to season. This item, this new Black Cleaver, literally has every single thing you could want on not only a bruiser, but also an AD carry.
And that is terrifying.
Alright, so let's talk about the item components. Okay, so before this was a BF sword, like you said, plus a dagger, and then it upgraded into the Black Cleaver. Well, now, we got rid of the BF sword. Now, the first component is a brutalizer. So we got 2 long swords, and then you make a brutalizer, and the other component is a ruby crystal. So, depending on what you're wanting to do, most bruisers can get that ruby crystal off the bat, and then later on get their brutalizer, get their Black Cleaver, and those AD carries can start off with a long sword, and depending on how things are going, they can either upgrade that long sword into a vampiric scepter, or if they're doing pretty well, they can go straight into brutalizer and then finish out their Black Cleaver. So stat-wise, we're looking at 250 health, which is fantastic on a damage item.
Absolutely, that's incredibly significant because I don't think there are too many other damage items that are as low costed as the Black Cleaver that produce the same kind of result.
So we got 50 attack damage, which is certainly nothing to sneeze at. 10% cooldown reduction, which is fantastic for just about any hero in this game. But the real meat and potatoes are the abilities of this. Now we got 15 armor penetration, and we have a unique passive now.
However, it didn't used to be unique. That's a fix that just happened with this balance patch, right?
Right. Basically, what was happening, they Riot made kind of a significant oversight when they made the Black Cleaver, or rather when they remade the Black Cleaver, and people were building 3, 4, 5 Black Cleavers because the passive for the flat armor penetration was not a unique thing. So you could build 4 Black Cleavers and it would essentially give you true damage.
That's just wrong. And that's just mean.
And it's not as if you wouldn't want to build 4 Black Cleavers anyway, because it has health, it has damage, it has cooldown reduction.
Which is basically everything a growing boy needs.
Exactly. And so now, the flat armor penetration is unique. The armor reduction per stack, that is not unique, so your auto attacks will reduce their armor for 4 seconds by, I believe it is now 6.5% per hit, 4 seconds.
Yes.
Stacking up to 4 times. So 2 Black Cleavers, still a pretty legitimate strategy, but I don't think we're going to see 3 to 4 Black Cleavers anymore. But this item is still exceptionally powerful on bruisers. It's very good on AD carries as well, especially the ones that are very cooldown reliant. AD casters like a Graves would benefit dramatically from this. Shoot, even Kog'Maw, he's pretty squishy. Why not?
Yeah, he is super squishy. That's one of the major problems with, or even like a Misfortune or somebody that's any ADC that's looking at, really, really high damage output, but at the cost of just being so incredibly squishy. This item just solves all of your problems in that area. And especially when that armor penetration wasn't unique. It was, if you were playing an ADC or a bruiser and you didn't have the Black Cleaver, you were doing it wrong. You were playing the game wrong, end of story.
One of the things I really like about this new Black Cleaver, okay, so it got pretty significant nerfs in the patch. The armor reduction used to be 7.5% per hit, now it's 6.25. Flat armor and pen down from 15 to 10 and is unique, of course, which obviously was an oversight and that needed to be corrected before the season started. But with most bruisers that were AD, I mean, obviously you got people like Rumble, Vlad, who are not going to really care about this item, but Trinity Force was basically the item you went for on practically every bruiser top. And now you have a very legitimate choice to make between Trinity Force and Black Cleaver, and I just think that's fantastic because, I mean, one of the things about Season 2 that was really problematic is that you pretty much knew what your item path was going to be before you even started the game, and now you actually have more decisions to make, which is really good.
I mean, I was talking about this earlier with a couple of other guys that was just saying how the amount of items that they put into the game now just make it so much more interesting, because you can see, like in a blind pick match, let's say, you can have 2 Graves on opposite sides with completely different builds, and both of them are completely viable, which is, awesome as far as customization goes. That's going to keep the format vibrant. It's going to keep the season vibrant. And, I was just going to ask, like, what do you think the Black Cleaver represents for the rest of the season? I mean, are we gonna be seeing the Black Cleaver for, is it just wrong to not have a Black Cleaver? Is it going to be one of those items that's just going to be absolutely essential? Or is it one of those things that's just kind of, it's going to be popular in, non-competitive play, but it's really not going to break out?
Well, it's hard to say because, it just got a pretty significant nerf, and it's still good, so it still could potentially get hit with even more nerfs. I think as it stands now, it's definitely a very viable item for AD casters that have, kind of mid-level cooldowns that they want to be casting a lot, like Graves' Buckshot is a really good example. If I was building Graves, I would be building Black Cleaver, probably 2 Black Cleavers on him on pretty much every single game. I think it'll be a very good counter build item as well, of course against people who are stacking armor. If your team is a little heavy on the AD side, let's say you have an AP mid and 4 AD champions somehow. I don't really know how that works, but with the Season 3, you don't know. I heard there were people who were literally running 5 people in the jungle and not laning at all.
Yeah, I saw that.
You can't really count anything out right now. But I think it's a good counter build item against people who are stacking armor. It's a good build for AD casters. I think if it doesn't get nerfed anymore, it is going to be just as good, if not better, than building your typical Infinity Edge Phantom Dancer on your AD carry or your Trinity Force into is it Glacial Hammer or Frost Mallet?
Frost Mallet.
I always call it Glacial. Yeah, so Trinity Force, Frost Mallet on your Bruiser. I think this really gives you kind of a different item path, and I think
Frozen Mallet. It's Frozen Mallet, not
that's
Frost.
right. Yeah, everything's
frozen. Frozen Heart and Frozen Mallet.
Right, and now Frozen Fist.
And Frozen Fist.
We're running out of our own adjectives here. But
too many frozen things.
And it's in terms of like the economy of how much effort it takes to build an item versus a champion. when you build new items, then it almost is like playing a new champion.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a fantastic idea because how much time does it take to build an item versus building an entirely new champion from the ground up? Plus, everyone has access to these items right away, so you don't have to spend money or your IP on these things. So it's a kind of a cool, kind of player-centric thing to do.
Yeah, and so I mean, this is going to be a weekly thing for us where we'll take a new item or a rebuild item or something and talk about it. But the Black Cleaver, definitely an item to keep an eye on. I am so glad that I'm not going to get into a game and see the entire team with at least 12 Black Cleavers on the entire team, as what was happening in the first couple weeks after Season 3 launch, because that was just the worst thing that could possibly happen. And I'm very, very, very happy to not see so many more Black Cleavers. But it's definitely an item to keep an eye on, and definitely an item to use if you have an extra item slot or even want something to counter build early. Pick up the Black Cleaver. So the last thing we're going to talk about really quick today is something that we're going to do over the next few weeks, which is talk about the different types of CC in the game, or crowd control. This is something that's absolutely critical in both team fights and the laning phase. You see that most of the best champions or the most played champions in League of Legends have some form of CC, some form of crowd control ability in order to just get that little bit of an upper hand in a fight. So the CC we're going to talk about this time is what I think is probably the most obvious, which is the stun ability. If you don't know what stun does, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're stunned. You cannot cast abilities, you cannot move, you're stunned for any amount of time. Some champions of note that have some pretty good stuns that may not see all that much play, but you got Tarek, who has his Dazzle, which stuns. You have Scion, who probably has one of the most well-known stuns because it's a targeted stun, which is just ridiculous. You have someone like Victor, who his stun ability is that cage that he throws on the ground, which slows and then stuns.
There's literally dozens of champions that have stuns, but let's talk about some of the ones that are really and truly game defining. And I don't know if you can really argue against this, that probably the best stun in the game is Amumu's ult.
No doubt. Good lord, that stun is anytime you get a very wide area of effect with CC, but when you get a wide area of CC like that is a stun, my god, it just can throw the entire tide of the fight into the opposite direction. I can't tell you how many times we've been 3v5 or 4v5 against the other team, and we're like, oh, we're going to decimate these guys in this team fight, and suddenly Amumu out of the bushes, flash into the middle of the team, pops his ult, stuns everybody, and we're all dead.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, and one of the reasons why it's so good is because you press it, it instantly happens, so it's very, very hard to dodge it, and it's just so good. The radius is incredibly wide, it does pretty decent damage for how easy it is to use. It's not like Amumu is all that squishy anyway, so you just kind of run right in there. And there's a reason why he's one of the primary bans in solo queue, and he's just insane. He's so good.
Yeah. So if we're looking at the ability stun in general, Will, and this is a question for you, how do you rank stun as far as opposed to other forms of CC? I mean, obviously stun is just amazing because you can't do anything once you've been stunned. But I mean, is it how would you use a stun effect in fight? Would you use a stun effect as opposed to something else?
Well, stuns are really. A lot of people would probably just say that stuns are the strongest form of CC, and they would be largely correct in saying that. They're so good for lots of different things. If you're trying to get away from someone, you stun them and run away. If you're trying to, save your ally from dying, you stun them and let your ally get away. If you're trying to gank someone, you come out of the bushes, stun them, and then you and your ally jump on them. There's not really a whole lot that stuns can't do. That's why, a strongly built team is going to have at least 1 to 2 of them. And if you can get Amumu before he gets banned, as typically happens in pretty much every game.
3s or 5s, Lord.
That ult goes off and your team is utterly eviscerated.
Yeah, press button, team dies, basically. But let's say you have a champion that's not like an Amumu with an area of effect stun. Let's say that you're coming facing down like a Scion or a Taric, someone that has a really good stun, but it's a targeted single target stun. How do you use that against an opponent effectively, more so in a team fight than in laning? Because obviously in laning you only have 1, maybe 2 options for stun. But then also, how do you counter that if you're the one facing down a rampaging Scion or Taric?
Well, tenacity is absolutely critical against these CC, especially stun, because it's just so devastating, because you can't move, you can't do anything. You know, if that stun hits you and you are even remotely just a little bit out of position, if that stun goes all the way through, I think Scion's stun is, 2 seconds?
Yes, it's pretty significant.
You know, that half a second that you gain from tenacity could be the difference between you getting away with a sliver of health, which will likely happen, and you outright dying. So for those targeted stuns, if you're laning against a Scion top, or you have a support Taric that you're facing bottom, you just have to get tenacity. I don't see any way around it.
Agreed. And then, again, if you are the Scion or the Taric or something and you come into a team fight, obviously you can only pick one person to stun. So you got to prioritize your target as far as who you're going to stun in this fight. So, when I'm looking to stun someone, normally I'm not stunning the tank.
Right.
Which a lot of people make the mistake of, oh, that's their biggest dude. He must deal the most damage. I'm just going to throw a stun on him. So he can't do anything, which is just incorrect, terribly incorrect. Like if I'm looking to stun someone, I'm looking for their AP carry, I'm looking for their AD carry, I'm looking for someone who's squishy, who's hanging around the outside, but who also has the potential to just go nuclear with their damage. I.e., like if I see a Cognaw or something, he's getting my stun as quick as possible. If I see a Vayne who's been a little bit fed, I'm hitting Vayne with my stun. Will, how do you prioritize your target first?
I think you put it pretty well there. AD carries are typically public enemy number 1 when it comes to crowd control, and when it comes to focusing them down. They have, arguably the greatest potential for damage. Some AP carries maybe have a slightly higher potential, maybe a Karthus. If you're right there in the middle of the entire team fight, you could potentially put out more total damage. But as far as burst, and as far as just overall level of priority, I think you go for the AD carry if you can. Usually the problem, especially with Scion, if we're going to talk about him for a minute, is that in order, if their team is set up correctly, getting to that AD carry is going to be problematic, because you're going to take all kinds of damage before you can get in range to stun him. So a lot of times I like to actually save my stun for when an AD carry fully commits to a fight. Let's say if I see an Ezreal flash in, or if I see a Graves dash in, I like to save my stuns for when I know that they can't just counter it with their own movement abilities.
Good word. Especially in Ezreal, because or any AD carry that is so mobile that they can easily jump in and jump out of a fight really, really quickly, and then your stun is basically useless. If you stun them behind their team, none of your team are going to get at them to finish them off. So that's definitely a good plan there. So I got to do this on the scale of 1 to 10. 1 being just the most useless ability, 10 being just unbelievably unbeatable. Dear God, why nuclear bombs? Where would you put a decent stun?
Are we talking single target or AoE?
Well, obviously AoE is going to be better than a single target stun. Right. But I'm talking just in general, the ability stun.
You gotta give it a 9. Just because it's always going to be good. Yeah. There are certain scenarios in which certain team compositions might not be able to use it as well, But I think overall it gets a 9 for me.
I think I gotta agree with you. I gotta go to 9, 8.5, somewhere in that area. I mean, it's one of those abilities that I am so happy to have a stun on my team, and I am so sad. It makes me the sad Alec to see a stun on the other team, because I know that stun is going to shred somebody on our team, either in laning or in a team fight. One way or another, stun is going to bring somebody down eventually. Stun definitely up near the top of the scale. It might not be always unbeatable unless you're freaking a moo-moo, but but it's definitely up there towards the top. So that covers our CC for stun. Like I said, really quick one this week because stun is just obviously good. There isn't too much you can say bad about stun. And that's going to bring us to the end for this week. Any closing thoughts or anything, Will, on anything we've talked about?
I think that if we're just going to go back to the stun there for a minute, I gave it a 9 because situationally speaking, you can tenacity your way out of stun, whereas with a certain other form of crowd control, tosses, no amount of tenacity will prevent you from getting tossed to your death.
True.
So with the right team, I would say toss is probably. We'll probably talk about that next week.
We will be talking about toss a bit, eventually. Yeah.
But yeah, you cannot counter toss other than just good play. No item is gonna have you not tossed to your death by Singed or Volibear or what have you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay. So no closing thoughts from me, but definitely give us a check out, guys. We have our contact email is at firstbloodpodcast@gmail.com. We're working on getting our own site up and running. So when we do get our own site up and running, obviously we will have our own email address and everything like that. But until then, if you got any thoughts about what we've talked about this week, any encouragement, or you want to call us every name that you could possibly think of, send it to us at firstbloodpodcast@gmail.com. We're very happy to get those things. And I want to ask you guys to do us one favor. One thing we want to do on this podcast is to get some did you know type facts. Little funny things that people have discovered, little bugs or little interesting tidbits that you could throw at us from League of Legends. So if you find anything that's a did you know, send it over to us. Of course, we'll give you credit if we read yours out loud. But send all kind of submissions in that area to firstbloodpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at firstbloodteam. That's our Twitter name. And then you can check us out on Facebook as well. And like our page. On Facebook, we're First Blood Podcast. We really want you all to spread the word on this. Tell anybody that plays League of Legends that might be interested in something like this. We really want this to help, and also just so that you guys can hear the sound of our sweet and beautiful and well-bearded voices for an hour out of your day. I know that podcasts have always been helpful with me and my boring, terrible jobs, keeping me sane for an hour or two once a week. So, anyway, so to sign off here, I am Alec, a.k.a. Eat More Chicken. I was joined today by Will, a.k.a. Sinskar. And we will see y'all next week on the First Blood Podcast.